Topic is movable chord forms against open string pedal tones. That's saying a mouthful. And this is the kind of thing you hear all the time in Pete Townsend and the Allman Brothers, like Melissa, Led Zeppelin, Ramble On, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, from the beginning, where you have chord voicings that move around, but you have a pedal tone that stays the same through all the movement of the chords. Now on the guitar, the easiest way to do that is to use one of the open strings as a pedal tone. So generally speaking, you would use the lower strings, the D string, the A string, or the E string as your pedal tone, and you move the chord voicings on strings above that. And when you're in altered tunings or open tunings, you can do the same thing. All right, this next example, this is going to be along the lines of what Pete Townsend does on the song Substitute, where I'm playing triadic chord forms on the top 3 strings against that open D pedal. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and... I started with the D triad here with the D bass and switched to an A triad, still with the D bass, down to G against the D, and then back to D. But I did a little on the high string moving down. To make it sound a little more interesting, then another D triad but a high one. Switch to a high A triad. So we did the same thing, just in 2 different registers. D, A, G, D, D, A, G, D. And this is a very Genesis-like guitar part. Now let's move over and use the open A string as a pedal tone. And we're going to slide 2-note chord voicings up the D and the B string as we play through this progression using that open A pedal tone. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and... All right, I'm playing an A minor 7th here, and I'm just sliding this up. So I'm also additionally using this open E string as a pedal tone, and the G string as its own pedal. It's just not the root pedal, which is A. And you hear Jimmy Page and Pete Townsend use patterns like this all the time. Now if we switch that first chord to an A major chord and pick up the tempo and increase the strumming that we're doing, you get a figure that sounds a little like the Kinks' jukebox music, and it's also like Question by the Moody Blues. 1, 2, 3, and... sixths up the neck. Now sixths are 2 notes, and the interval is that they're a sixth apart. That means 6 scale degrees, and we're in the key of A. So the scale I'm using as my reference point is A mixolydian, which I'll show you in a second. But if we move up, if we start with these 2 notes, we're in the key of A, as I say. The note on each string is going to go up the A mixolydian scale. So on the D string, we're going from E to F sharp to G to A to B to C sharp, D, and E. And that's harmonized a sixth higher by going from the major third C sharp to D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. So here's A mixolydian played in 4th position. So it's just like a major scale, except you have a flat 7, a dominant 7. All right, so in this next example, I'm going to use those sixths and move all the way up the neck, as I just showed you, and then the following example, all the way back down in a rhythm guitar part. Here it is. 1, 2, 3, and... 1, 2, 3, and... All right, now, instead of using sixths, let's just use thirds. We'll go back to using our D as our pedal tone. And again, this is going to be based on Mixolydian. So we're in the key of D. So we have D Mixolydian played in fourth position is like this. Switch to fifth. And you'll hear patterns like this all over the playing of Steve Stills with Crosby, Stills and Nash. And also you hear it, Noel Redding do it on the song with Jimi Hendrix, Little Miss Strange. Here we go. 1. Let's try the same technique moving back to using an open A pedal, but we're going to do full triads on the D, G, and B strings. And you hear this stuff, it's along the lines of Eric Clapton's Let It Rain, or you hear it in Rod Stewart stuff with Ronnie Wood, like the first few Rod Stewart and the Faces records that have a lot of great acoustic guitar on it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and... Let's take the same concept, move over, and use the low E as our pedal tone. And I'm going to be playing triadic shapes on the A, D, and G string. And this is along the lines of what you hear on Melissa by the Allman Brothers. 1, 2, 3, and... Now, one of the nice things about this form is that we get to use the top two strings as well as sympathetic ringing notes or higher pedal tones, along with each one of the chord voicings, and it sounds great. Big part of alternative rock is that sound of the open strings ringing and the music of U2 and the Smiths, bands like that. All right, let's stick with the triad concept for a second. We'll move back to using the open D pedal tone. And I'm going to switch from a suspended triad shape to a major triad shape, and then descend the board in somewhat of a symmetrical fashion. And this kind of sound you hear Jimmy Page use all the time. It sounds a little bit like Kashmir. So I started with D sus to D, and then C sus to C, A sus to A, and this also actually sounds like D sus 2, but it also functions as A sus 4 to A over D bass, G sus 4 to G over D, F sus 4 over D, which also